Councillors, can I have your attention, please? I welcome you all to this meeting of the Town Planning Committee meeting and declare the meeting open. The meeting is being held remotely due to the COVID-19 restrictions and is being broadcast live over the internet. I'll commence this meeting with the following prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders past and present. Apologies. We have no apologies for the evening tonight. And declarations of interest. Councillors, are there any interests that you wish to declare? There being none, I shall continue. Only item 5.1 has been withdrawn for tonight's proceedings. Item 5.1, development of the land for a habitable outbuilding. 2, non-habitable outbuildings, horse arena and associated works at 95 Old Sawmill Road in Goon South. Withdrawn by Councillor Moore. So, Councillor Moore to move.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council issue a refusal to grant planning permit T190478 for the development of the land for a habitable outbuilding. 2 non-habitable buildings, horse arena and associated works at 95 Old Sawmill Road, Goon North, Victoria, 3812, on the following grounds that are listed that I will expand on shortly. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And Councillor Brown has indicated he would like to second this. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Back to Councillor Moore to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for the second. This application is inconsistent with the relevant state and local planning policy. The application is also inconsistent with the applications on the zones and overlays. And based on evidence, the intended use of the outbuildings aligns more closely with a second dwelling prohibited under the zone as opposed to a habitable outbuilding. This has got a long history up this road, including a stop works order going back some 12 months ago for the absence of having the proper permits in place. I'll address the non-habitable outbuilding, of course, at first, which is the actual hay machinery building, which is seeking a retrospective planning permit for this hay barn. It's noted as being 9 metres off the boundary. I believe it'd be closer than that on a visual viewing, but you know, I'm just going by what's on the planning application here tonight. That's all I'm going by. I've got a few notes here, Mr Mayor, and I'm going to go to them, sorry. In particular with this proposal, the habitable building and other structures are scattered all over this significant area, and it is a significant area, which is inconsistent with the rural conservation zone and with the rural character of this area. The site contains a dwelling, outbuildings and vegetation to the eastern corner. The structures they've been seeking approval for are a considerable distance away from the existing property. The habitable building is 145 square metres and approximately 95 metres from the dwelling. That's 95 metres, so it's a long distance away that they want to put this building. The scattered nature of the proposal would fragment the land and would have a significant visual impact on the area. The application does not provide all the information required to assess the horse arena and the associated works. So, Mr Mayor, as you can see, and councillors, you can see by the application, there's a lot missing. There's a lot of information required, and And of course, they talk about a movable building lot as an existing dwelling, and used to provide accommodation for a person of independence on the residence and the existing dwelling. The information provided by the applicant to council on the 13th of August did not demonstrate that the persons who intend to occupy the building could be classed as a dependent, and therefore the residents they're going to be connected to the residents of the existing building, and that's what they're not. Council believes the proposed habitable outbuilding goes beyond the definition of the habitable outbuilding, and is in fact more closely that aligns with a small secondary dwelling, and this is prohibited in this zone. They intend to use the habitable outbuilding in a further evidence by a letter submitted to council outlining that they're having a DPU, which is a dependent persons unit, on the land would allow their friends to help with the wildlife shelter and maintain this property. With respect to the residents and the volunteers there that do this work for the wildlife shelter there, it just looks that they need to have these friends there to maintain this property and financially fund it as well. As you'll see in the same letter in the email, they're going to use the joint financial benefit. There's also confirmed as well through that email that where they stated that the secondary couple are going on the title and paying out the registered proprietor's mortgage. So they look like a permanent resident there, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question though, if I may, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay, for our CEO. After reasonable time and reasonable effort, and maybe a VCAT appeal, if it's acted on, how will this be addressed after this? With these illegal buildings, or they're not, well, by this they're not being allowed, and they have got the right to go to VCAT. How long would it take for these buildings to be addressed, as in be demolished or removed? What power do we have to act on this for the local residents on this road in particular? Because I can understand this is right on the edge of the road here in this significant area, and it's been there for a long time. So I just want to know what power we have as councillors. Can I ask you that, CEO, please? Could you answer that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Moore, for your question, and through you, Mayor. So there's a few things in answer to that question, and assuming that if the council tonight sees fit to refuse this application, the applicant will be advised of the committee's decision to refuse the permit, and the applicant may exercise their rights to have VCAT review the decision. So that's the first thing. And it may be necessary to await the outcome of that process before any further action. So then if VCAT doesn't overturn the council decision, and if the council decides to refuse, then council can take action, or the applicant might voluntarily remove the unpermitted structures. If they don't, council will need to obtain an order to enforce the planning scheme from VCAT, and typically that would include direct a party, someone to remove the unpermitted buildings within a period specified by VCAT. So there's two kind of potential VCAT actions. One recourse for the permit applicant, and then council would need to access VCAT to enforce that. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Moore, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to ask the question of the CEO. Because we have a lot of situations like this within our shire, and I get, as a councillor, I get very frustrated at the point we've got no power to do anything about them after the aftermath. Like, people take the law in their own hands and decide to do these buildings and do them illegally, and then all of a sudden we're put in a point where we can't do anything about it after they're in there in retrospective. So it's a very difficult position we are in, and I feel for the people who do the right thing. So these buildings do not, like set into the environmental significance overlay, and particularly the bushfire management overlay also, which is in that significant area. So I'm going to go to Councillor Brown. I'll go to the seconder if he would like to add a word or two. Council, I know this is I've withdrawn this, but I want to thank you for your second, and I'll if you want to say a few words. Thank you, Councillor Brown and Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And I will go to Councillor Brown, the seconder, to speak next to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for withdrawing this motion. It's a fairly easy one, actually, because when you look at the applications in breach nearly of every zoning or planning requirement that council have, including the rural conservation zone, the environmental significance overlay, the bushfire management, which you did mention there, to move more people into a bushfire-prone area without a proper bushfire management plan is smacks of disaster. I noticed that the original application was for a DPU, which was a dependent persons unit, and the applicant couldn't prove a dependency, so they scrapped that and went for this second option, which is a habitable outbuilding, which in effect, if you read through the application or the officer's remarks, actually is a second dwelling, which is prohibited. So that really should be the end of the conversation. The very nature of the development, with the scattering of the buildings all over the place on the northern boundary there, with no real linkage to the main residence. And also I take your point, Councillor Moore, where the applicant has said that the people that would be residing in this building would possibly be helping in financing the situation or maintaining the property, which smacks to me like it was going to be used as a second dwelling, not just a residence where people could come and go. And that a DPU has to be demountable, and this isn't a DPU. It is a straight out second dwelling. The officers have said so, and as such they've refused it. And I really have not got no more to add than that, except that it's an application, I think, that's been put in to try to work between the lines to get a result that really is not justified, given all of the restrictions and the regulations that it contravenes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Moore, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for your wisdom. You have to go and look at this property to understand that there are the paddocks are all decked out for horse property, like an adjustment property as well, as so it goes hand in hand with what's happening in this situation. So it's not just the buildings themselves. There's more to this than meets the eye. You've got to go there to understand. But as you can see on this application, the application does not comply with the relevant state and local planning policies. The purpose and the zone as applicable and the applicable overlays doesn't adhere. Additionally, it also recommended that the application is refused on the basis that the applicant is merely masquerading the truth, intending the use of the habitable outbuilding for the sole purpose of eliciting approval of the application. The applicant was given sufficient time to address these concerns by council, a lot of time. And whilst the habitable outbuilding was relocated and the internal layout minimally amended, the changes do not demonstrate that the intended use of the outbuilding. And a building of a DPU, if you don't realise this, has got four things go through to it. Now, one of them is it requires a toilet, and this hasn't got one in it for a starter. So that, for a starter, makes me very wary of this. So I'm withdrawing this because I believe the law being unfair to law-abiding residents we have, particularly in these areas, that in surrounding areas, that they follow all the rules and regulations, get permits, put them in place, and do the right thing. And there are some people that just don't follow those rules, and that's why I'm asking my fellow councillors to support this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillors, I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I declare the item carried. Thank you. That concludes tonight's meeting. So thank you all for attending, and thank you for the audience and their interest in watching tonight. And I declare the meeting closed.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.